Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to another session with Mr. Smith, your humble, hopefully always humble, servant. It's not always easy to be humble, is it? But that is something we should all strive to be, in my humble opinion. All right, so this is going to be hopefully a short one. But I wanted to get something in, and let's talk about a chapter in a great book called Tavistock Institute, Social Engineering the Masses by Daniel Estulin. And of course, the Tavistock Institute was originated during World War II in London. It was part of the British military psychological operations wing. And then, in a nutshell, it turned into social engineering for the masses, right? The Tavistock Institute, along with the Frankfurt School, brought us the Beatles and brought us the counterculture revolution of the 60s and got everybody on drugs and over-sexualized and basically immoral and base. And why are they doing this? In a nutshell, they are trying to keep us. This is the crux of the matter. They're trying to keep us, righteous people, from connecting to the Most High God. And the Most High God is righteous and good people's God, even if they don't know it yet. As the economy collapses and people are really going to start being hungry for answers, a lot of the good people, hopefully all of the good people, will come back to the Most High God, because that is the answer. But let's talk about, in this book, chapter 5, it's on television. So I just wanted to read some things, and we're going to talk about some things, and here we go. It says, the slyest form of control is making people think they are free while having someone manipulate their every move. One form of dictatorship is being in a prison cell, seeing the bars. The other, a far more subtle form of control and dictatorship, is when you cannot see the bars and you think you are free. The biggest hypnotist in the world is an oblong box in the corner of everyone's home. It says, is an oblong box in the corner of the room that tells people what to believe. Dun dun dun. Of course, that is television. Now your cell phones, now your social media, now your computer monitors. It's pretty much all the same. But we'll refer to TV as the media, I guess, or the media as TV right now. TV, or television, with its reach into everyone's homes, creates the basis for the mass brainwashing of citizens, as you will see in this chapter. You may not realize it yet, but your mind is being shaped and molded every time you turn on. He calls it the one-eyed babysitter. When we were young, we used to call it the boob tube, right? Because the original televisions had a cathode ray tube in them, right? As part of the physics and the engineering of it. And of course, a boob is an old style word for kind of an idiot or a simpleton. So the boob tube, or idiot box. Anyway, now this is very important right here, especially if you've never heard this before. When you watch TV, the right hemisphere is twice as active as the left, which in itself is a neurological anomaly. Quote, the crossover from left to right releases a surge of the body's natural opiates, endorphins, which include beta endorphins and enkephalins. Endorphins are structurally identical to opium and its derivatives, morphine, codeine, heroin, etc. In other words, your television works as a high-tech drug delivery system, and we all feel its effects. I've known this for quite a while, right? The television emits electromagnetic waves that hit your brain, hit your eyes, And electromagnetic waves of all frequencies, all the way from radio waves, extra low frequency radio waves, all the way up to the gamma rays. Right? It's all electromagnetic energy. It's all what, which is a fancy word for light. It's all light. And remember, there's only a small fraction of that electromagnetic spectrum that stimulates the retina in your eye hole. Your eye hole, whatever that thing is. The hole in your eye that lets the light in. All of the other electromagnetic energies do not stimulate your retina, and you don't see them. But they do have an effect. They stimulate parts of your brain. They can tan your skin, right? The ultraviolet rays, you don't see them from the sun. They can change the color of your skin. X-rays can go through your skin and bounce off your bones and teeth, and that's how you get an X-ray vision of your bones and teeth. I actually should do a lesson on the electromagnetic spectrum, which is a high school lesson, but a lot of people forgot that. Or they're too busy looking at Johnny or Jimmy or Janie or Becky or Keisha, or, instead of paying attention to the teacher. But anyway, so the television sends out electromagnetic frequencies that cause your right hemisphere to be twice as active as the left. And of course, this produces opiates, which causes you to be calm and sedated. And you are more suggestive when you are calm. In other words, you're being hypnotized. And I had heard quite a while ago that the original idea or purpose for the television set was to hypnotize people. And they wanted to, as soon as possible, and it happened after World War II, they started putting television sets into every home. Now, before this, you had radio. Radio sends out electromagnetic frequencies as well. And before that, you had the telegraph. That emits electromagnetic frequencies as well. And they've discovered, even going back then, that telegraph and radio waves have an effect on the brain. We'll get into that another time. I'm reading a good book on that. But let's get back to this. Okay, reading on in this book, right, the Tavistock Institute book, it says, in other words, your television works as a high-tech drug delivery system, and we all feel its effects. Another effect of watching television is that the higher brain regions, such as the midbrain and the neocortex, are shut down. And most activity shifts to the limbic system, your lower brain region. The lower, or what they call reptile brain, simply stands poised to react to the environment, usually deeply embedded fight or flight response programs. Can you say emotions? Right? So your higher brain gets shut down, your intellect, your critical thinking skills. And only the base part of your brains is activated when you watch TV. Now, I personally believe that if you are at a certain level of spiritual awareness, you see what's going on when you watch TV. I mean, me personally, I don't have a TV in my house. I got rid of it. I have a computer monitor, of course. I have a gaming monitor. I do some Xbox games, which do the same thing, right? I'm sure they are manipulating my brain, but I do know that when I go to a bar, for example, and I actually do look at the TV screens, like if it has ESPN on or CNBC, it irritates me. I can't watch that stuff. Something has happened to me where my spirit just doesn't like watching TV. So hopefully anybody that's listening to this will strive to get to that point as well, because TV is clearly not reality, and I think a lot of you know that. But let's read on. Get this. Moreover, these lower brain regions cannot distinguish reality from fabricated images, a job performed by the neocortex. So in other words, your lower brain regions cannot distinguish reality from what's on the TV. So they react to television content as though it were real, releasing appropriate hormones and so on. I've noticed this when I play Xbox games, that I get more, I get aroused, and I have to tell myself, no, that's the Xbox. I just get more, what do the British call it, randy. Are you feeling randy today? Hi, Mike, you're feeling randy? I can't. Sorry, bad British accent. I don't even know what that is. But you know what? I think you know where I'm getting at there. But if you are aware that you are being manipulated, stimulated by the electromagnetic waves coming off your monitors and stuff, you can recognize it and shut it down. Okay? It's when people don't recognize they're being manipulated that is the problem. All right, let's read on. It says, studies have proven that in the long run, too much activity in the lower brain leads to atrophy in the higher brain regions. Yeah, brain is like a muscle. If you don't use it, it atrophies. Now, you may not have known this, but I bet you, the people who brainwash you on a daily basis, surely did. Don't worry, we'll come back to this a bit later. That's from the book, by the way. There's no doubt that if you read more into this topic that I'm talking about, you realize they've been studying people for centuries. And they know about, the effects that these electromagnetic frequencies that travel through the air have on people. They know. I'm sure they knew in Roman times and even back then. Even back before that is what I'm saying. In the Egyptian times, right? But let's keep reading. For the brainwashers in charge of this societal transformation, meaning TV, they have pulled off the ultimate trick. They were able to persuade people that what they can see with their eyes is what's there to see. Subsequently, meaning TV, people will laugh in your face when you try to explain to them the bigger picture and the unseen reality behind the curtain. In a 1981 interview, Hal Becker from a think tank called Futures Group in Connecticut said, I know the secret of making the average American believe anything I want him to. Just let me control television. You put something on the television and it becomes reality. If the world outside the TV set contradicts the images, people start trying to change the world to make it like the TV. Can you say Sex and the City? Sex and the City, if you don't know, was a TV show, I believe it was on HBO, in the late 1990s, early 2000s. And it was 4 women living in New York City, and all they did was go from one man to the next and talk about this sexual encounter and this sexual encounter. And guess what we had right after that show? Right? We have channels talking about, we have YouTube channels talking about how women go through their garden tool phase, if you know what I mean. Garden tool, think about it. Right? They're all trying. All Western women are trying to be like Sex and the City now. So this quote from 1981: if the world outside the TV set contradicts the images, people start trying to change the world to make it like the TV. People start to try to make their reality like the TV shows they're seeing. And now, what is the result of this? We have a bunch of dysfunctional women who are unable to pair bond with a man because they've had so much experiences, I'm not going to use the S word, so many erotic experiences with men that they cannot emotionally pair bond with a man. And then you have all these bad marriages. It was by design, people. You think Sex and the City was just up there? No, it was there to change, to socially engineer people. And that's just one example. I mean, we can go on and on. They use comedy to get people to accept things. Okay, I don't want to get too off topic, but I'm going to do that one too. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to do an example of that. But let's continue on. Okay. This book is really good. I highly recommend it. It's on Amazon. It's not that expensive. I think it was like $12 or something, maybe even less. All right, let's read this though. This is interesting. Okay. Let's go back to the Nazis in the 1930s. Let's read this. Needless to say, the Nazis represented but a minority of the German population, even when they were in power. What about the so-called, quote, good Germans who went along with Hitler's terror? How was it done? The same way it is being done to us today and every day through the mass media dissemination of, quote, information. Get this. And the most universal of the mass media was radio. Back then, the most universal of the mass media was radio. In fact, once in power, the Nazis ordered the production and mass dissemination of cheap radio receivers for the entire population of Germany. Right? This is the real meaning of, quote, mass audience. The concept behind it was the same as discussed by Freud in mass psychology. That is, quote, individuals participating in the mass phenomenon are susceptible to suggestion, to losing the person's moral conscience, thus become overwhelmed by the mass experience. In other words, what they're saying is Freud found out, and these psychologists found out in the early 1900s, that when people all hear the same thing at the same time, they are more susceptible to believing that thing. So when you have a bunch of people watching the latest episode of Sex and the City, what do? They go talk about it at their work, right? They call them water cooler shows. They talk about them at the water cooler at the office or on their lunch breaks. So you can see the Nazis did this with radio. They put cheap radio receivers in every German home. And so every German at the same time was hearing the speeches by Hitler and stuff. And it makes them, they call that mass audience for mass programming. Right? And of course people want to have something to talk about at work, so they watch these shows. Right? They don't want to be the weird guy that doesn't watch anything. What did you do last night? Oh, I wrote a poem. Oh, I worked on some music. But you're not a professional musician, so I do music for a hobby. You know what I mean? People think you're weird when you do stuff like that. They're like, you got to sit there and, did you see the game last night? You know, you get what I'm saying. All right, now, even going back to the early 1900s. Okay, here's what it says here. Control over the media has been a long-term objective of the globalist elite. In February 1917, Congressman Oscar Callaway placed a statement in the Congressional Board describing the origins of what he called the newspaper combination. According to that account, the J.P. Morgan banking interest and their allies got together 12 men high up in the newspaper world and employed them to select the most influential newspapers in the United States and a sufficient number of them to control generally the policy of the daily press in the United States. Today, the new media monopoly puts the number at 5 corporations, only 5, controlling America's media. So even back in 1917, they were planning to control what was the information that was put out to people. Oh, and by the way, going back to the Nazi thing, I almost forgot, where they were giving radios to all the people in the 1930s. Isn't it eerily similar today, right? You can buy a widescreen, TV for dirt cheap, and everybody's got one. Smart TVs are dirt cheap, right? Food prices are going up, gas prices are going up, cars are going up. But not TVs, they're still dirt cheap. And the same thing with cell phones. Remember the Obama phone? He was going to give them to everybody? All right? Yeah. I think it's the same, the Bible tells us, the scriptures tell us there's no new thing under the sun. These people keep doing their same old tricks. Just the technology gets better, I guess. you want to say it, quote, better, more sophisticated. Radios, newspapers, radios, TV, and now cell phones and computers. And of course, you put on the internet, everybody goes to the Yahoo homepage. And of course, everybody sees the same, news articles every time. All right, I do want to tie this into spiritual things, and then we will be done. I am reading the Ephesians chapter 2, and we'll read to maybe we'll go to chapter 2, we'll do verse 1 through maybe 5 or 6. Okay, this is Paul, the Apostle Paul. If you really study Paul, he is a I don't like to swear, but I'll do this one time. Badass mofo. Next to Christ and some maybe Abraham and stuff, he is one dude I would like to meet. But he says this. He says, and this is a letter he was writing to the church at Ephesus, right? To instruct the church at Ephesus, which was one of the churches that Christ commanded the disciples set up. And Paul was teaching them, right? And it said, and you he hath quickened, who were dead in trespasses and sins. So he's talking about Christ has helped people to get out of their trespasses and sins. Sins meaning going against the Most High God. Where in time past ye walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. I wanted to point that out. It's a great scripture. Who is the prince of the power of the air? And what are we talking about? Airwaves. Electromagnetic waves, sending signals, video, audio signals through the air. That's what all of this is, right? Radio, telegraph. Well, not telegraph, that's through a cable, but same concept. Radio, cell phones, TVs, right? All that stuff, all that information. Who's the prince of the power of the air? Well, prince refers to an angel. If you study the scriptures. Prince, most of the time in the scriptures, refers to an angel. Well, who's the angel of the power of the air? And who's the angel over this world, right? Because Paul says, according to the course of this world, that's Lucifer. He's referring to Lucifer here. Lucifer is ultimately causing all this chaos. He uses people to do it, but he's ultimately doing this. And for those of you that are not in the scriptures or the Bible, you might be rolling your eyes, or this might not be for you. But I'm just asking you to think about it. Some people believe Lucifer is like a metaphor for just evil. Okay, good enough. I disagree, and he's an actual being. But let's read on. Okay, so in verse 3 it says, among whom also we all had our conversation in times past in the lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and we were by nature the children of wrath, even as others. But God, who is rich in mercy, for his great love wherewith he loved us, okay, even when we were dead in sins, hath quickened us together with Christ. Okay? So, he's basically saying here, we were all brainwashed by the prince of the power of the air. And we gave into our base brains, our lower brains, right? Our lust. As some people put it, we're thinking with our lower members. Right? Flesh, desires of the flesh, he says. And by nature, children of wrath. What is going on? Everybody's angry. The violence and the just emotional. Wrath is another emotion. Okay, so who's causing all these problems? Using TV, using the radio. Ultimately, right? According to Scripture, it's Lucifer. So the answer is to recognize that and come back to the Most High God. I hope you guys got something out of this. I hope you see the connections. Even if you're not that much of a spiritual person. Maybe you're an atheist or an agnostic, but you got to admit, as things get worse, people are, there's something spiritually going on here. Okay, so this is your humble servant, Mr. Smith. Please like and subscribe. I will be putting up those Amy or Lil Tay videos on my Patreon page. So if you want to go over there and subscribe, that would be great. Anyway, everybody have a blessed weekend, because it's Friday afternoon right now. All right, and we'll see you next time.